Good morning. This is just a little video. I know that when students are working on summatives, it's great to be able to help them. And I know that it's not always obvious what we're doing. We explain it to the students in class, and then they ask you for help at home, and you just don't know. So this is a little video to try and talk you through it. Here's the toddle task that should be sat on your students' science class at the moment, the to-do list. We're basically doing a massive summative that will take us through to mid-January. You see the final deadline now is the 17th of January. And it's split into two parts. A part that we will submit the final bit on the 13th of December, the last day of this term. And then we will start, when we get back, we will start at AD. There is no expectation and no need for students to work on this over the holidays. Holidays are for, in my opinion, breaks. So let them do it. Please be mindful, some students like to turn in their work to get it off the to-do list. If your child has done that, I would just have a chat with them about, well, have you actually done it? Because getting it off your to-do list is great, but if you've not done it, not helpful. So some students have turned in their summatives before we've started them. So just maybe have a little chat with them about that. We have as well, but just reiterate that. So the premise of the summative is that they are pretending to be a sport advisor for some kind of athlete or sports team. And the criteria A and D in science is to explain scientific knowledge and apply it to a scenario. So after the holidays, the students are going to make a presentation where they are going to advise various stakeholders within a sporting team on a fitness program and regime for their athletes. And we're going to throw in that there will be an athlete with some form of special condition that needs a little extra tweaking. It's up to the students what condition they go for. It might be relevant to them that they might know someone with it, or that they might just research one and go, oh, that sounds interesting. So that's the AD. They're going to make a presentation, probably going to be recorded as a video, but there will be scope for them to make decisions where they advise, like, the athletes, they advise the coaches, they advise the board on here's what our athletes need to do to train to get match ready or event ready, whatever they do. Obviously, a lot of students will pick football and they'll do their favourite football team, but they could also look at an individual, like a cyclist or a team of cyclists, or any sport they want, and advise on it. So that's the AD. They must demonstrate knowledge. So they must tell us about the cardiovascular system that we've been learning about. We've learned about the heart, the lungs, what aerobic and anaerobic respiration is. This is their opportunity to show off as much as they know in their presentation, and then apply it to, well, my athletes need to get more like VO2 max levels, so we're going to get them to do some sprint testing and some shuttles to try and improve their cardio, anything like that. They are 12 years old, so they're not expected to be experts, but I want them to show everything that they know. Then the B, C, the one that we've started now, criteria B and C in science. The B is to plan an experiment. The C is to evaluate how it went. It is done as one big task for most of our experiments because it's fun for students to design, do, and then evaluate the same experiment, as opposed to breaking it down into separate components. So we're doing that as one big one. I've also made, for students, if they want, a checklist. If they go on here, if I go on like this, I view it like they view it. I've made them a Word document that is what I would consider to be all of the steps in order to do the criteria BC. My Wi-Fi is very slow right now. We've had a bit of a problem this morning. It's resolved, but it's not fixed, if you know what I mean. It's a Word document. Maybe I'll go about it this way. It's a Word document that shows, okay, this is this week, the week we've started it. In the first lesson, they should look at the task sheet, they should write the question and write their prediction. Next lesson, to stay on track, they need to do this, and then lesson 3. Next week is a bit of a weird week because we have various lessons that will be disrupted. So I've just put a general, try and gather their data and create a results table and graph. They're going to gather their results at home. Their criteria B is to test their own personal fitness. So some of them, for example, might run for 1 minute on the spot, and they're going to measure their heart rate before, during, after, and every 2 minutes after for 20 minutes to test their heart rate. That's their experiment. That's the basic premise. Before they do their experiment, they're going to design it. So they're going to say, well, my question is, how does running affect my heart rate? My prediction is that during exercise, my heart rate will go from 60, which is my resting, to 120, and then we'll take a further 12 minutes to come back down to resting. The independent variable, the thing I'm changing, is my running on the spot. I'm going to run for 5 minutes or whatever. My dependent variable is what I'm measuring. That's my heart rate, and I'll measure it using my Apple Watch, or I'll measure it by putting my 2 fingers on my neck and explain how that happens. Control variables are all the things they'll keep the same, like what water will they have, what the room temperature will be, what they'll do in terms of sitting afterwards, stay seated, not moving, all the things they'll control. And then what equipment they need, what safety they need to think about. Obviously, if we're doing sprints, let's not do sprints on the road. What the steps will be, then they gather their data and do it that week. And then after that, this week will probably be a bit shorter as well, because this is National Day week. So I think we're off Monday, Tuesday, I believe. They need to make a table and a graph. They need to write a conclusion and explain what their graph shows. And they need to think about whether their prediction was correct or not. It doesn't matter if their prediction is incorrect. So please don't change the prediction. Just, was it right? What aspects of it were correct? What aspects of it were incorrect? And then they need to evaluate their method. Was their method effective at getting results? If they did it again, what would they do differently? What equipment might they use next time? Then the Friday of that week is the formative deadline. They don't actually necessarily have to have finished, but anything they submit on that Friday, their teacher will look at and give feedback so that the following week they can make changes and submit their work all before the deadline, the last day of the term, which in hindsight was a poor choice, but I've set it now, so we're sticking with it. But the last day of the term is the summative deadline so that teachers can mark it when we get back in January. So that's the checklist. And then I've broken it down. So I've done lesson by lesson. Then I've said, okay, lesson 1, you're going to write down about 6 things that you think you need to do that lesson. So I've started them off with read the task sheet. They should always read the task sheet every summative. Write a paragraph of what you think you're meant to do, and then look at your friend's paragraph and see whether you agree. Just make sure you know what you're doing before you start. Then write your question. Make sure you've done this. And at the end of each lesson, they're going to put the ones they didn't do onto the next lesson. This is just going to help them manage their time to meet the deadline. Just trying to train them a little bit on how to do that. So that's that task. The bit that you should always look at, this is really not helpful. The bit you should always look at on Toddle whenever there is a summative is go on the summative. Every teacher will have made a task sheet for that summative. There should be an explanation. You should see the deadline. And there should be always a task sheet. We will often include extra help, we have a writing template that students can fill out. They can still get an 8 using the template, and in fact it will help them get an 8. So please download it, save it, work through it, answer the boxes. There's guidance, but then in each box they have to do something. So for example, here's the question. We've given them an example of what the question might look like with options to delete and fill in that can then go into this box. And each box has guidance as well, and sentence starters and stuff like that to get them going. Then the task sheet looks like this. Every summative should start with a task sheet, and students should read it, every single word. I know it's a long document, but they should read it all, because it is the teacher saying, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to think about, here's the stuff you're going to submit, what you can actually produce, a lab report for the criteria BC, a presentation or a video for the criteria AD, What are you being assessed on? What is tested in that assessment? What things from here might need explaining? What does familiar and unfamiliar mean in this context? And then how I'm going to grade it, and advice on, like, if you want a 7-8, these are the things you need to do that students often forget to do. So start with the task sheet. So in summary, criteria BC, plan an experiment, do it and write it up, testing your own fitness. Criteria AD, apply that knowledge and understanding alongside what we've been learning about to how might you develop a training program for fitness, a sports team. And I've made a checklist to help them along their way for the criteria BC, and if it's a success, if students like it, we will train them further when we do the AD in January with a similar checklist. I hope that helps. If you have any more questions, please do reach out to your teacher. I encourage the students to, when they've done a section, put it in ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT's opinion. ChatGPT will grade their work. It's a bit vague. It will say, like, that's a 4 to 8. And you're like, okay, so it's not a fail. So it's a bit vague, but it will give them very good suggestions to improve it, and it even gives them prompts like, you say do exercise, that's too vague, specify what exercise you should do. It's really, really good for that. It's quick and available to the students as opposed to waiting to speak to their teacher the next lesson and joining probably a queue to speak to their teacher. So encouraging them to use those resources is really good, and they should be talking to each other. They can help each other between them. They can all get an 8, and that should be our goal. I would love it if all of our grade level all got 8s. It would be amazing, and they should help each other. It's not a competition against each other. It's a matching up to a rubric exercise.